Polypede Works here coming to you once again with One Piece chapter 1155 entitled The Rocks Pirates. So we have a color spread this week. It's of the Straw Hats playing in the heights of some buildings while putting a ladder between two tall buildings while the city is going on below. It's very funny because in all these types of color spreads, no matter the subject, Jinbei will always be off in the corner. I think it's very funny that he does not want to draw this man because it keeps happening. It just keeps happening. So moving on with our chapter, but wait, One Piece is on the front of Jump this month. I just want to bring that up. And it's a Gears cover of Jump because we have Gears 2, 3, 4, and 5, along with our main lad Luffy in the middle. Just wanted to bring that up. That's pretty neat. But for real though, going on with our chapter, we have Rox meeting Loki where he left off. Rox finds out that Loki is the son of King Harold. He tries to blackmail Harold into coming back home by injuring his son. Loki doesn't think his father will come back for him just because he's injured, so Rox hurts him anyway. As he does so, it is said Rox's swordsmanship was renowned for its brutal impact, akin to a giant hammer or a cannon fire. It's said to blow everything in the surrounding vicinity away. This is very interesting because you know whose powers are very similar to this? Blackbeard's and Buggy's, because Blackbeard has the Trimmer fruit, so he could do the same thing. And Buggy has the Muggy balls, the tiny Buggy balls he developed that he keeps in his shoe that cause a very large city scale explosion, or at least city block level explosion. Very interesting. Just saying. So Rox attacks Loki, but then we flash back to about a year in Mary Joie, in which it has been found out that Rox had kidnapped 5 kings. This was used to extort Emu. Emu doesn't think much about this, but that's when Rox appears in the flower room. This is also where we find that Gunko, presumably, was the assistant to Emu. People have been talking about this for a long time because I've heard it being brought up in various spots. I don't know if in the present this is still her job. I'm not sure, but seeing as how she was so close to Emu, it would explain why Emu can take her over in the present via the use of their Devil Fruit abilities. So that's interesting. But yeah, people have been talking about this for a long time. In the present, the handmaiden, I guess you can call her, has a straw hat, so I don't know if the person has changed or it's still Gunko. But it is very interesting that back in the day, Gunko did serve as the handmaiden to Emu. That's very, very interesting. But what's also very interesting is that during this meeting between Rox and Emu, Rox mentions that he's a Davy Jonason pirate. Now, Davy Jonason sounds like a philosophy. I don't know if that's a snafu of the translation because I've also heard it said that he's just a simple Davy Jones fan. So those two things could mean the same thing, but the term Davy Jonason is a very interesting term because it sounds like a philosophy. This also means that Davy Jones most likely was a character once upon a time in the world of One Piece, which is probably how the Davy back fight started, through that one guy, because even during the time of Rox, we find out that has always been a tradition, a part of the world, which makes a lot of sense because that's how Rox got most of his crewmates, presumably after the 3 that we see in chapter 1154. So with that being said, too, what's also super interesting about this, if this is a philosophy, the whole Davy Jonason thing, this reminds me back to Romance Dawn, because in Romance Dawn, a pirate could subscribe to 2 different philosophies, that of the Peace Main and that of the Morganeer. A Peace Main was more of a adventuring pirate who saw his crew as his treasure, or saw their crew as their treasure, right? Whereas the Morganeer was into fighting and treasure hunting. So the Peacemain were the good guys and the Morganeers were the bad guys. Now, based on the nature of the Davy back fight, it's a bit odd as to what philosophy Davy Jones subscribes to, or what Davy Jonasonism, I guess you could call it, is supposed to subscribe to, because in a Davy back fight, you are taking members of rival crews as your own. So you're treating crewmates literally like treasure because you're winning people to your side, which is like the Peacemain, but you're doing it through fighting like the Morganeer. So I don't really know what Davy Jonasonism is supposed to be, because it's combining the philosophies of both the Peacemain and the Morganeer. But on the topic of philosophies and liking and subscribing, please, if you enjoy this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you could like it and maybe drop a sub if you're new. But at the end of this video, there shall be a playlist to my daily video series, Quickworks, in which I cover various topics concerning One Piece. There's a new one every single day. But back to our chapter discussion. But yeah, Rox claims that one day he will be back. It's also quite interesting that Rox appears to be wearing face paint. You know who else wears face paint? Like since the start of the series? Buggy. But that's when Harold and Rox clash, as both of them are trying to leave the Holy Land. The various celestial dragons are wigging out just about how big Harold is, and they all want him for a slave. Of course they do. Apparently, something has caught Harold on fire. I don't know what. And he's trying to run away, and that's where he clashes with Rox. And I'm guessing this is a Conqueror's clash because of the Black Lightning. This, of course, blows everybody away, and Rox just jumps off the edge of the Holy Land afterward. But before that, he does get direction to how to get an L bath, so that's cool. And then we are treated with Rox's wanted poster. Rox's wanted poster looks exactly like how Buggy's does in the present now. Tongue sticking out, hand grasping for the camera. So, you're telling me that Buggy is not the son of Rox. Okay. The allegations, they keep getting bigger and bigger. The Buggy agenda will not falter. And you can see here too, it looks like he's wearing face paint over the eye, like Buggy has always done. I'm just saying, dog. But from that point forward, Rox started to attack ships carrying tribute to the Celestial Dragons, which then funded his pirate crew. He also targeted pirate ships too, which I find that very interesting, which makes him more of a complex character, because he's not just going after the government ships, he's going after rival pirates and stealing their treasure. And he participated in Davy back fights, which he also used to build his crew. And here we see him in boat races, we see him with an axe, and the boxing competition is standard apparently, because we see him in boxing gloves fighting a fat guy with a big mustache. This is interesting. I just thought that was a Foxy thing. So I wonder, did boxing come out of the Davy back fight as an actual sport in the One Piece world? And we got to talk about that. I don't know. Foxy may be important. Could you imagine? No, I think Foxy may be important in the future. But yeah, that brings us back to Elbaf as the Rox pirates make their way there and meet King Harold after he was called back when he found out that Loki was injured. From here, we are introduced to the entirety of the Rox pirates as they are at this moment in time, because we know that there are some guys missing, particularly Gil, Bastar, Big Mom, who was a really late addition apparently, and Kaido. All those guys aren't here. So these are the first few guys that Rox gets. So we have Stussy, Buckingham Stussy, who goes by Miss Bucking at this time, and she is called the Tech Bandit. So that woman that was with Nugay and Shiki with Rox in 1154 was indeed Stussy. And people were telling me it was Stussy. I wasn't sure, but I still think Kurozumi Higurashi was a part of his crew at one point, because where did she touch Shiki's face in order to copy him? Speaking about Shiki, he's here, and he has a new epitaph at this moment in time, as he is called Shiki the Wicked in his younger days before he becomes the Golden Lion. And Golden Lion is even mentioned here, which is wild. Then we have Don Milan, gangster from the West Blue. So I guess the West Blue is filled with these mafioso types, because remember, Capone Beiji is also from the West Blue. So that's real weird. Following that, we've got some interesting characters. First, of course, Edward Newgate, who would be known to be Whitebeard. But then we have the pirate prophet, Ochoku, future Commodore of Pirate Island. So he's the guy Blackbeard beat up in order to take control of Pirate Island. And following him, we have Ganzu, the smuggler. He's the guy in the armor who's probably dead, because he's the guy I mentioned a while back that looks like Zombie 889, the weird elephant centaur one. So yeah. And he's also the guy that's with Gil Bastard during the whole God Valley incident flashback. So, real interesting. We don't get crew occupations for these guys. No one has an occupation just yet, but I do think Shiki at least was the helmsman. But looking at Ochoku, a thought came to mind. What if he's the father of Gecko Moria? Because Gecko Moria is in his 50s, right? And we know Whitebeard is 20 years older than him. So I could believe Ochoku is his father, because Ochoku's a weird guy, as he appears to be a weird vampire guy. He's got an ascot, and he's floral pants, which is something that Moria does have. His pants have always been decorative. At least in the present, they've been decorative because they have that weird checkerboard pattern on them. And then he's always had an ascot. So I could believe if Moria is the same race as, say, like Kaido and Yamato, I could believe that his mother was like an Oni and Ochoko is his father, which makes a lot of sense given that his father then became the Commodore of Pirate Island. Blackbeard presumably killed that guy and then proceeded to capture Moria. Seeing as how he's so obsessed with his father's legacy, presumably, I could believe that he wanted the son of a former crewmate, like how he used the son of a rival of Rock's to get into the Warlords. It's very interesting when you start to put things together. So yeah, I could believe that Ochoko might just be the father of Moria. I can believe that. Now, Ganzu doesn't look like anybody immediately other than that zombie I brought up. So I wonder what his deal is. He's an interesting guy. He's a very interesting guy. But yeah, during this conversation, he's just trying to convince Harold to join his crew because the government really isn't worth much. And they were talking about how Pirate Island came to be a stronghold for criminals who were originally exiled there to rot. But now Rock's plans to take it over and make it a pirate paradise. On the government's dime, no less, because he tricked the government in saying that he made a deal with them in order to get paid to take down Pirate Island. But instead of handing it over to the government, he's going to use it as his own base right under the government's noses, of which, of course, he actually does. And he proclaims to Harold that he is going to be king of the world after he claims Pirate Island as his base. And if he can't do it, somebody is bound to pull it off in the future, which that's what I'm saying too, that this whole soul business about Blackbeard actually being him is nonsense, because Blackbeard is trying to inherit his father's will in this way. But I think maybe by accident, Buggy is going to end up doing this just naturally, because as I've said in another video beforehand, it seems as though Blackbeard is a bit of a tryhard in doing the things he's trying to accomplish, whereas Buggy just happens upon these things naturally. And we're going to talk about that again in a future video. The Rock says something very true here. There is no such thing as power that lasts forever. Join me, Harold. If we team up, we will be unstoppable. Which Harold is a very formidable opponent, and I guess he does have conquerors from that clash we see earlier on in the chapter. But during this conversation, Loki is looking on in awe, which probably led to Loki getting stabbed again later, where he wants to join Rox's crew, even though his father did not. So that's interesting. That's interesting. And he's inspired. He sees his salvation in Rox, which makes me think that he's going to join Luffy. If all those many fruit theories are true that I made, I could see it. I could see it. I don't think he would join Buggy, because Haruden, that's another point. Haruden was already a part of Buggy's organization. Now he's a part of Luffy's organization. I could see Loki being a part of Luffy's crew, though, because I don't think Blackbeard's going to get any more characters. And I think the whole stand-in for the giant for Blackbeard has to be Sanwan Wolf. And also, I forgot to mention, he was doing all these Davy back fights with no flag, which I find very funny because, of course, famously, as you know, once Foxy lost the Davy back fight against Luffy and the Straw Hats, Luffy drew his new flag for him and it looks super goofy. So it's very funny that Rox at the time didn't have a flag and he was winning all these fights. But at the end of the chapter, we see that he eventually did get a flag. And he did claim the Pirate Beehive, the Pirate Island, as his new hideout. And he sends shockwaves throughout the world. Unfortunately, we are on break next week, but I intend to give you all mountains of content with all this new information during the time in which we're waiting for chapter 1156 to come out. And 1156 should be a big chapter because 5 and 6 are in the chapter number, which are Luffy's numbers. So we are going to be treated to a very fine chapter in a short period of time after the break. So I can't wait to see what happens there. With that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede.